According to social learning theory, it's more important how parents act around their children rather than how they try to teach their children to behave. Meaning that if parents are trying to teach their kids not to be aggressive, but the parents are acting aggressively around their children, the children are likely to behave aggressively also, even though the parents are telling them not to. That's a bit about social learning theory, which we're discussing in this video. Let's dive in some more. But before we get into all that, let me introduce myself. My name is Keegan. I have a master's degree in counseling, and I'm a licensed professional counselor. I make videos like this to help you better understand various concepts in the world of psychology, counseling, and mental health. Keep in mind that engaging with this channel does not constitute a therapist-client relationship. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes. This does not substitute or replace professional mental health care. Social learning theory was developed by Albert Bandura, who is a professor and a psychologist at Stanford University. Bandura contributed to many different ideas that we have, social learning theory being one of those. When it comes to social learning theory, the American Psychological Association has a definition of this, which states that learning is largely or wholly due to modeling, imitation, and other social interactions. If we were to say this another way, social learning theory states that people learn by watching how other people behave, and the results that they get from this behavior, people can learn through this observation. From social learning theory, we can gather one of the ways that culture can develop. Often, culture is something that isn't explicitly taught. Instead, it's something that people often learn and take in from observing the people around them. Then, as people within that culture continue to behave in similar ways, the other people around them continue to do so as well. Within a culture, norms are the behaviors that are expected within that group. This means that if people do not behave within the way that's expected in the culture, they will likely be seen as different at best and criticized in many other cases. This cycle is how social learning theory sees culture develop. It may be helpful to recognize that behaviors, both positive and negative, can be passed on through social learning theory. An example of this might be if there are derogatory words or phrases that are used within a culture, and even though these are derogatory, they're not questioned within that group. Here's another example. Rosenthal points out how it's not uncommon for people to use honorifics such as ma'am or sir. There are points throughout history where these titles are expected, and if a person doesn't use them, they might be scolded, and the use of them may even gain praise. That said, these titles can be problematic in some cases, as they only recognize a gender binary that includes male and female. Also, the use of titles like ma'am and sir will often require an assumption of that person's gender. There are a few other points that we have to discuss about social learning theory. But first, if you're enjoying this video and finding it helpful, please help me out by giving it a like and subscribing. In other theories, they'll often emphasize genetics, tendencies, or other traits that a person might have. As you may have gathered, social learning theory does not focus on these, and instead puts the emphasis on the environment that the person is in. As we've been discussing social learning theory, we've been talking about it in the context of one person observing another person. And while the theory does assume that learning can happen by observing any other person, the learning is seen to be the most powerful when they observe someone else that they like, view as powerful, or otherwise admire. If we look at this in terms of group counseling, if one person within the group tends to be more of a leader or is otherwise more prominent within the group, others may learn through observing that person's behavior, whether that learning is for better or worse. A final note on social learning theory comes from Albert Bandura himself. Often, this theory will be labeled or categorized as a behavioral theory. However, Bandura did not consider that to be accurate. His view is that, while the theory does involve observing another person's behavior, he thought it was better considered a more cognitive theory. His reasoning was that, once the person observed that other person's behavior, the actual change and learning that occurred for the observer is a cognitive process. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope that you found it helpful. While you're here, make sure that you check out some of the other videos on my channel. Thank you so much for watching.